traffic stop, a corrupt racist cop, a woman who's not who she seems, and a confrontation that will change everything. FBI agent Ava Morgan thought tonight would be another routine mission, gathering intel and taking down a dangerous network of corrupt officers. But when a racist cop pulls her over, everything shifts. Under the pressure of the moment, she must navigate not just the investigation, but the personal humiliation that follows. This isn't just a case. This is a battle for justice, dignity, and control, and she's about to school a man who thought he was untouchable. Ava Morgan's hands gripped the wheel tightly, her mind laser-focused on the task ahead. The night was dark, the only lights coming from the street lamps that illuminated the deserted city streets. Ava had been working undercover for months, infiltrating the local police department, gathering evidence on a corrupt network of officers who preyed on the vulnerable. Her heart pounded in her chest as she neared the intersection. Tonight felt different. She couldn't shake the sense that something was coming. She slowed down, instinctively checking the rearview mirror. Just as she thought, the flashing red and blue lights from a patrol car lit up behind her, making her pulse race. Ava wasn't one to panic. She had been in these situations countless times. But tonight it was different. This wasn't just any cop. This was Officer Brian Matthews, the very man she had been tracking for weeks. Matthews was a seasoned officer with a notorious reputation for using his badge to intimidate, harass, and oppress minorities. And tonight, he was about to pull her into his web. Ava eased the car to the side of the road and waited. Matthews's footsteps echoed as he approached her window, the sound of his boots heavy on the pavement. There was a cockiness in his stride that made Ava's stomach twist. He was the kind of officer who used his authority like a weapon, and she knew exactly what kind of man he was. Matthews leaned in, the arrogant smirk on his face immediately obvious. "License and registration," he demanded. Ava handed him the documents without hesitation, maintaining a neutral expression. She had done her homework and she was prepared for whatever came next. But as Matthews looked down at the papers, she couldn't help but notice how he lingered on her face for just a bit too long. His eyes narrowed as he looked at her through the car window. "What's a woman like you doing around here?" His tone wasn't just suspicious, it was laced with disdain. Ava's breath hitched for a moment. It wasn't the first time she'd been stereotyped because of her race, but something about the way Matthews said it, the underlying venom in his voice, it made her blood boil. "I'm just passing through," she replied, her voice steady, her eyes unwavering. She couldn't afford to show him her hand just yet. Matthews scoffed, barely hiding his disgust. "Yeah, I'm sure you are," he muttered, almost as if to himself. "I don't know why they let people like you drive through this neighborhood." Ava's heart skipped a beat. There it was, the racial slur. She had expected it, but hearing it come from him in this context felt like a punch to the gut. Ava didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. But inside, she could feel the anger rising. The injustice of his words, the belief that he could treat her like dirt just because of the color of her skin, was something she had dealt with before. But she wasn't going to let him get away with it. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze locking onto his. "Excuse me, officer," she said, her voice calm but laced with an edge. "What exactly did you mean by that?" Matthews paused for a split second, his eyes widening in surprise. He hadn't expected her to challenge him, but then the cocky smirk returned. "You heard me?" he said with a shrug, his words dripping with arrogance. "People like you don't belong here." Ava's pulse quickened. She knew what he was doing, trying to bait her, to throw her off. Balance. But Ava Morgan wasn't the kind of woman who would cower. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Did you just say what I think you said?" Matthews's smirk widened, and he took a step closer to her window, leaning in. "What's the matter? You gonna cry about it?" His voice was thick with mockery. "I don't take kindly to people who don't belong here, especially ones who think they can drive around in my neighborhood." Ava's mind raced, but she remained calm on the outside. This wasn't just about her personal pride. It was about making sure he knew that his behavior wouldn't go unchecked. She took a deep breath. "You have no idea who you're talking to, Matthews. You've just made a huge mistake." Matthews smirked again, obviously enjoying the power he felt over her. "Oh yeah? What are you going to do about it?" Ava's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but her voice didn't shake. "I'm an FBI agent," she said, each word cutting through the tension like a knife. Matthews froze, his smirk faltering. For a split second, he seemed to hesitate. Ava could see the doubt flicker across his face. He hadn't expected that. "I've been watching you, Matthews," she continued, her eyes fixed on his. "I know everything about you. Your little games, your corruption, the way you use your badge to harass people like me." Matthews's face twisted in anger, his earlier bravado quickly replaced by defensiveness. "What the hell are you talking about? You're just some—" "Don't," Ava interrupted, her voice rising. "Don't talk to me like I'm some victim. You don't get to intimidate me anymore." The tension between them was palpable now. Matthews was no longer the confident officer he had been just moments ago. Ava could feel the power slowly shifting in her favor. "You've been abusing your position for far too long," she continued, her voice growing colder. "And tonight, I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are." For the first time, Matthews seemed to falter, his earlier bravado evaporating. Ava's eyes flicked to her phone, which had been resting on the passenger seat. She reached over and hit the record button, the sound of the camera clicking on filling the silence. "I'm recording this conversation," Ava said calmly, "and I'll make sure it gets out. People will know exactly what you've been doing. The world will see the truth about you." Matthews took a step back, visibly rattled. Now, he couldn't shake the fear creeping up his spine. The moment Matthews realized what was happening, his entire demeanor shifted. He wasn't just a cop anymore. He was a man who knew his career, his reputation, and his freedom were on the line. He stammered, trying to regain control. "You think I'm scared of some tape? Nobody will believe you. You've got nothing." Ava smiled, her expression cold. "I don't need anyone to believe me, Matthews. Your actions will speak for themselves." Matthews shifted uncomfortably, the walls closing in on him. Ava could feel the victory in her bones, but she didn't let her guard down. This wasn't over. Not yet. "I know all about the people you've hurt," Ava continued, her voice unwavering. "The families you've targeted, the lives you've destroyed, but it ends tonight." Matthew's face grew darker, but he couldn't muster the same confidence. He knew he was cornered. With a final, resigned sigh, Matthews turned and walked back to his patrol car. His shoulders were slumped, his posture defeated. Ava watched him drive away, a small sense of triumph settling in her chest. But this wasn't just about one officer. It was about a system, a culture of oppression that she was determined to tear down, piece by piece. Matthews was only the beginning. Ava sat in her car for a moment, letting the stillness of the night wash over her. Her hands were still trembling from the adrenaline, but the sense of victory was undeniable. She had done it. She had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been wronged by a system that had been built to protect the guilty and punish the innocent. But Ava knew this was just the beginning. Matthews might be off the streets for now, but the fight for justice was far from over. There were others like him, corrupt officers who had to be exposed one by one. As she drove away into the night, Ava couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of hope. She had turned the tables on a man who thought he was untouchable, and that was only the start. The battle wasn't over, but tonight, she had won.